So one of the questions I get asked a lot is, if it comes down to FDM printing and you want to print in a garage or a shed, what considerations should you be making when you're making your buying decision? And this makes sense. You might not have space in your house for an FDM printer because they are getting larger and larger and you want to have somewhere else. And a garage or a shed might be the ideal spot for you, but there are a few things to consider. Now, the examples I'll be using in this video is something like the Bambu Lab A1, A1 Mini, or the P1S, basically a non-enclosed printer versus a fully enclosed printer, and why you might want to go for either one of these. So first off, my experience is using them in a garage. I've used them over the winter in the UK. It gets down to like -7 degrees Celsius, and I've always had perfect results with the Bambu Lab P1S, and there is a certain point at which the A1 will start to fail, so that's when you want to be considering something different which is fully enclosed. Now, if you're printing outside in a garage or a shed, ideally you want to be looking at a fully enclosed printer, like the Bambu Lab P1S and any of the machines that are above that from Bambu Lab. From other brands, you've got things like the Elegoo Centauri Carbon as well, but I've not personally used that, but that should realistically perform exactly the same. It's something like a P1S when it comes to lower temperature printing. Now, there's a couple of reasons why you want to have a fully enclosed printer. And the first reason is just temperature. Once it gets to lower temperatures, and we're talking around about 7 degrees Celsius and lower in the UK, that's when I seem to find that my Bambu Lab A1 will start to have some issues. Anything above that, it's perfectly fine. I have no issues at all. But once it gets below that temperature, that's when I see some issues. And that's because temperature is a 3D printer's like, not worst nightmare, but it just doesn't perform as one. There's a couple of reasons for that. Now, once that temperature starts to dip, you start to have issues with bed adhesion, layer adhesion, but one of the bigger issues is it's just the consistency of the temperature. So if it's in a garage or a shed, for example, you're probably gonna have some drafts. You're gonna have some big swings in temperature. So at one point it might be a bit warmer and then it will drop quite suddenly. And when that's happening, that's when you start to have those issues. So a fully enclosed printer really helps to prevent that and keep the temperature consistent. One question I've been asked around this as well, if you are looking at a fully enclosed printer, does it have to be one of the new fanfangled one that has like active heating and chamber heating and all of that? And in my experience, no, it absolutely doesn't. You can just have something like the Bambu Lab P1S, which maintains a relatively consistent heat through just using the machine itself and the heat bed. One of the main benefits of that enclosure is, as I said, it's blocking any of those like drafts or wild swings in temperature. So you don't need to have something that's actively heated, at least when it comes to printing things like PLA. So if you are printing in more advanced materials like ABS, for example, or PETG, and there are more advanced materials that you want to be able to use, and obviously have a look into that and see what's going to happen there. You might want to have active heating in that case. However, I printed ABS in colder temperatures in my P1S and it's worked perfectly fine, but that's my experience. Another big reason why you might want to consider something like the Bambu P1S and above is because of the AMS systems that it comes with. Now, personally, I love the AMS light that comes with the Bambu Lab A1, but it has one major downside, and that is moisture. Now, if you are printing in a shed or a garage, chances are it's probably not going to be the most watertight. You are going to have some like moisture issues in there. As we get in the winter in the UK, we're very prone to a lot of rain. There's a lot of moisture in the air. There's a lot of condensation. There is a lot of humidity and everything else. And moisture is filament's worst nightmare. Like, it gets bad. There's a couple of things that happen. As your filament starts to absorb moisture, it means that your print results are just going to go through the floor. You're going to have issues with print quality. You're going to have issues with potentially clogging the nozzle as well. There's just loads of issues there that will happen. So you will want to be able to dry your filament. Now, there's a couple of ways you can do this. You can buy a dedicated filament dryer, or if you have one of the more advanced AMS units, that will go with something like the P1S or the P2S or something like that. And the reason being is they're enclosed units. They help to reduce that humidity. And the newer version of the AMS, so the AMS2, also has filament drying capabilities. So that way you can dry out your filament to get rid of any of those moisture issues. Now, if you did really want to save money and you want to be able to print in your garage or your shed with something like the A1 and get that really value proposition, rather than paying more for something like the Bambu Lab P1S, then there are a couple of ways to make sure that you can print longer in colder temperatures. And the first one is to get one of like the super tack mats that you can get. I use one of these from Big Tree Tech or Panda Tech or BitQ or whatever they're calling themselves these days, and it is fantastic. I've been using it for well over a year. I'll have it linked down in the comments below as well. They sell a couple of these. They sell like a cold plate as well, so you can use your bed at lower temperatures, and they sell this one as well that I use, and I'll have it up on screen for you. And this thing sticks. It really, really sticks. And I have very, very few issues when it comes to printing and bed adhesion. Like I mentioned earlier though, bed adhesion isn't your only enemy when your temperatures are wildly swinging. What you might find is everything will stick very nicely to the bed, but then you get a big draft of cold air coming through, and it can cause layer adhesion in the taller prints, which means that separates and it goes wrong. So that is something to consider as well. This sort of build plate will help though when you're getting into those lower temperatures, but once you start to get into a much lower temperature, I still don't have success with my A1 using this build plate. So just bear that in mind. It will help you get a little bit longer and into some of those colder months, but once you get to really cold months, then it starts to go out the window. So I hope that's helped. In a nutshell, basically, if you are printing in a garage or a shed, something like that where you can't control the temperature, you want to have something that is in a print enclosure. There's a number of reasons for that. We can go back in the video and watch some of those, but that's the sort of thing you want to be looking at. Now, just one bonus answer here as well is that could you not just put something like the Bamboo Lab A1 Mini or the A1 into, I don't know, an enclosure itself? Get like one of the grow tents that I use for my resin printers. And the answer is no, you shouldn't, because according to Bamboo Lab, it doesn't have any active cooling on the machine, which means if you put it into something like a grow tent or an enclosure, it has the risk of the components inside of the machine overheating, and that could damage the machine and stop it from working, or at the very least start to lower the lifespan of the machine as well. So it's not recommended by Bamboo Lab. I wouldn't recommend you go off and do it. It would work, I suppose, in theory. You could put it in something like that to keep those temperatures and everything consistent, but it has its risks, so just bear that in mind. So if you are thinking, you know what, I can get one of these, stick it in an enclosure when it gets cold, it's probably not the best route to go down. So I hope that video has helped. If you've got any questions you want to ask or ask me in the future for our community questions bit, throw it down in the comments below or just send me a message. I love answering these, they're good fun. And in the meantime, happy printing. Hopefully I will see you in the next one. Ta-ra!